Boy, this is like voter turnout. Can't believe it. Especially after staying up all night. Did you guys all stay up? Watch the elections all night? Thanks for coming. So how many people here know what Hannah's House is? I think a lot of you have been here. Okay, so pretty much everybody. It's a local therapy center. We founded it 2 years ago. Nicole Crotinger is our therapist, and we're really excited. This year we're adding another therapist, and we've started neurofeedback training, which is now being used for ADHD, autism, sleep disorders, anything that's anxiety-based, and we're very excited about that. So part of our mission statement is to provide parenting workshops, and this is the third one in this series by Kevin Gallagher, and we're really excited to have him here. He lectures all over the place, so this is a coup, having him come to the Valley. So without any further ado, I'll introduce Kevin and tell you there is one more workshop in this series, December 7th, and then we're going to let you all rest for a while. Kevin?
We'll let you stay indoors. Thank you, thank you. This mic will not help you hear here. It helps the camera here. So if you can't hear me, don't think it's a mic problem. Just raise your hand or go like this. You're supposed to flip it for them. All right. So as Cindy said, my name is Kevin Gallagher. I'm a mental health counselor in Burlington in private practice. Most of my day I sit in a room with the door closed, sitting with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 people at a time, sometimes whole families. Families have gotten very, very interesting over the years. Mother, father, divorce, their new spouses, kids, stepkids. It can be rather a crowded space at times. And I have this luxurious job that I get to help people think for a living. I mean, I can't really fix anybody or anything. I don't love clients as much as their families love them, and nor should I. But I'm more interested than a stranger. And if I can provide an environment where people can sit down, simmer down, and think, most people tend to know what to do. In fact, I had a conversation with a young man this afternoon, 24, not a very good thinker. He would be the first to tell you. Most of his answers to my questions are, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And I said, you know, I just can't believe you're this dumb. I said, I bet if you tried to think about some of the answers to the questions I'm asking, you probably know. So when he tries, I actually just got an email from him last week, he said, if I really try to think, I can. And it's like, yeah. But he's so used to the quick answer, I don't know, whatever, I don't know. So I have this great job where I get to help people think. So part of this series that Hannah's House has put on, some of you were here, I think we ended early summer, and so you had the summer off. I don't know why they're going to give you the winter off. It sort of seems like that's a good time to get out of Dodge, but we'll probably be back in the spring. But this workshop is looking at fostering independence in kids and setting boundaries with kids. The next one, the last one in December, will be on how kids affect relationships. Marriage or otherwise, because not everyone's married these days. Because it's hard to imagine that kids don't have a profound impact on relationships. In fact, I heard someone even say once that kids are marriage busters. Because most good parents spend a lot of time and energy on their kids and less on their marriage. That would be the good parent. And yet somehow that doesn't seem to work if we have a 60% divorce rate. So something's not working about trying to balance marriage and kids. But that's for another time. Today we're just going to talk about families. And we're going to start with what's confusing for me, so I apologize. My screen shows nothing because my screen is now there for some reason. So I'm going to do a lot of what looks like I don't know what I'm doing, but it's really true. So we're going to start with a quick little video that some of you may know. Yes.
Get up now, get up out of bed. Wash your face, brush teeth, comb, sleeping head. Wash your clothes and your shoes. Hear the words I said. Get up now. Get up and make your bed. Are you hot? Are you cold? Are you wearing that? Wash your books and your lunch and your homework. And grab your coat and your gloves and your scarf and hat. Don't forget, you gotta feed the cat. Each breakfast meals for Santa. It's the most important meal of all. You gotta miss so you won't grow up one day to be big and tall. Just remember the old man down just please seeing you at 3 today. Don't forget your piano lesson is this afternoon, so you must play no shovel. Too slowly, but hurry. The bus is here. Be careful. Come back here. Did you wash behind your ears when it's lined up with rough? Would you just play fair? People like make a fight. Don't forget to share. Working out each term never came. Get along. The baby come down there. Clean your room. Wash one. Put your supper away. Make your bed. Do it now. Do we have all day? Were you born in a barn? Would you like some hay? Can you eat? But you're born, I say. Let's go get off the phone. Now since I'm close, turn it down. No texting at the table. Your iPod's on a high. If you don't listen up, where you going in with whom and what time do you think you're coming home? Say thank you, please, excuse me, makes you welcome everywhere you go. No appreciate my wisdom someday when you're older and you're grown. Can't wait to have a couple little children of your own. You'll thank me, no counsel I gave you so willingly, but right now I'll thank you. Not to roll your eyes at me, close your mouth when you chew, would appreciate. Take a bite, maybe two, but the stuff you make. You sport, you know, purple, set you straight, eat the food. I'm gonna run your plate, get an egg at the door, don't fuck with me, get a grip, get in here. I'll have the freak and job, get a life, get a PhD, get a dose. I don't care, starting your grounded until you're 36. Get your story straight and tell the truth for once, for heaven's sake. And if all your friends jumped off a cliff, would you jump too? If I said it once, I said it, please don't now, as I recall that you're too old to act this way. Must be your father's DNA. Look at me when I am talking, stand up straighter when you walk a place. For everything and everything must be in place. It's not a time when I'll give you something real to write about. Wish these special things with PJs on, get them, get how to say farewell. Don't forget, I love you.
That is entitled on YouTube, Everything a Mother Says in 24 Hours in 2 minutes and 55 seconds. I'm sure no one could relate. It is quite a job, isn't it? I don't want to play it again. Let's see. No. All right. Let's go here. So weird. I could never do, you know, that surgery that they do with computers. You would not want me operating on you. All right. The worst part of parenting. It's a shame that it gets called that. But it is very hard to set limits, mostly because some of the biological imperative of children is to push at limits. So the 3-year-old that you say, don't put that in your mouth, and they go, like, while staring right at you. It's sort of like, what is that? You know, what is that? Don't touch that. Like right over. And so it is some about separating yourself, that kids at all ages, from infancy through adolescence, that one of the ways that you start establishing yourself as a person separate from somebody else is to push off of them. Unfortunately, for you, children are pushing off you. And these are people that you've invested a lot of time and energy in. You'd think they'd be more appreciative. They're not really, not really. In fact, I heard a psychologist a couple years ago. I don't know what he was talking about, cancer. But then all of a sudden he said, you know, children are overrated. And people were like, what do you mean? And he said, well, you know, I love my kids and they turned out great and they're all grown up and, you know, I'm waiting for grandkids now at this point. He said, but it's a lot more work than it is rewarding most of the time. And when all is said and done, you sort of look and you think, that was it? Like that, 25 years? And sort of like, okay, now they're kind of off and on their own. So he's also a psychologist who once said sort of like, you know, that he believes that a good marriage only needs to be mediocre, which I sort of agree with him on some level. I think a lot of people are quick to get out of marriages because they don't seem as good as they're supposed to be, whatever that means. So this setting limits problem really is exactly the job that you were built for. And you don't mind doing it until they usually start walking and then talking and then driving and having sex with people and drinking and drugging and lying and sneaking out. And, you know, and you get little bits of that all along the way. You know, you'll have two siblings, one can't seem to find something, you look all over the house for it, you find it 2 days later in the other sibling's drawer at the bottom. So you think, huh, she's a little thief. You know, how did I raise that? Where are the values? Where are the values with these children that I instilled in them? You know, they don't seem to have any. And that's true, they kind of don't. They're sort of testing them all the time. They are looking for ways to figure out how to be different than you, separate from you, and come up with their own ideas of right or wrong and good and bad. And you're the warden, you know, at the prison for the prisoners trying to get out. Gets much worse around 13 or 14, because I actually think that something happens, like you'll notice that there'll be sort of one night where your kid goes to bed and it's as though someone implanted a chip in their head that said, I have 5 years to get the heck out of here and be on my own, and I don't know anything. And so from now on, I'm not telling you anything. I'm not asking you anything. I'm going to, you know, you like going to church. I'm going to decide I don't believe in God. You know, you eat meat. I'm now a vegan. You know, it's sort of like it's almost like I am terrified that the clock is ticking really loud. I am going to be in charge of my life very soon. I don't want to depend on you forever. And you're in my way. All the time. All the time. You know, my sister has triplets. They're 10 now. But I remember sort of one summer when maybe they were about 6, 5, no, probably 5. And she said, I hate summer because the window's open, and then that means the neighbors can hear me yelling at my kids. And she said, you know, I say things like, you know, she said, you know, my son will call, you know, Mom, tell them to leave me alone. What are they doing? They want to touch my penis. You girls, leave your brother's penis alone. If your brother wants you to touch his penis, he'll ask you to touch his penis. In the meantime, it's not your penis. You know, and then, you know, get your hands out of the toilet. You know, and she's like, and I think, what do the neighbors think? You know, as I'm screaming, you know, wait till he asks you. You know, but the girls were fascinated by the fact that he peed so differently and could aim and, you know, up and down, and they sort of felt really limited, you know, by their one trajectory down. And so they would sort of want to hold it, you know. And so she said, you know, I sometimes feel like I'm just cranky all the time. I'm on them all the time about something. You know, and in spite of it, they don't often seem that discouraged. You know, they kind of get over it, you know, relatively easy, but not all the time. But it is a lot of no, 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 no. I was in Staples on Saturday, of course, after Halloween. This little boy is over, like, making love to the candy rack, you know, touching everything. Mom, you know, pointing, holding up, and she's standing in line saying, no, no, no. You know, and he just could not have been more crestfallen, you know, just sort of like eventually walks over, you know, and stands there with her. And she said, you have candy at home. I don't have that candy. I don't have that candy. You know, and it's just sort of like, it's like always no. No, you can't have that now. No. And so I want you to be excited about making your kids miserable. Because I am finding, as a therapist, children are not miserable enough. It's true. It's true. I do not see the kind of resiliency in 14 to 20-year-olds right now than I did even 10 years ago. You have beautiful college sophomores, 19, 20 years old, checking into Fletcher Allen after overdosing on a bottle of Tylenol because their boyfriend broke up with them on Facebook. You know, and I say, you know, I'm old compared to you, but back in the day, if someone like broke up with you, well, first of all, you just hated them. Like that seemed like a good place to start. You probably cried. You maybe started vicious rumors about them. Maybe you got with their boyfriend, you know, as a way to like really make them mad. But you didn't die. Like you didn't like think of like death. I mean, not that teenagers, you know, 30, 40 years ago didn't think about death, and there's always a morbid quality. I remember reading Lisa Bright and Dark, which was like this tragic story of a heroin addict, and I sort of read it like 6 times, sort of thinking, God, it'd be so great to be like a heroin addict and have to like deal with all this like coming back, you know. And so there is a goth quality probably to every teenager. But you know, that I want to die. I want to die. I can't manage. This is one of my sadder stories, is that I saw a mother who was in trouble with DCF, Department of Children and Families. They were contemplating making a charge against her for child abuse / neglect because she had taken her daughter's cell phone away. Now, her daughter misbehaved, called her, you know, names that I won't say on tape. And the mother said, that's it, you're not getting your cell phone for, you know, I don't know, 3 days or something. The girl was so distraught, and they don't have a landline. And so DCF determined that without a landline, this girl was isolated at 14 because she can't drive and can't go anywhere, especially if she's grounded. And she has no way to access her friends, which she needs support during this very difficult time. And that withholding her phone is abuse / neglect, possibly. So this mother's crying in my office saying, I don't want to go to jail. Like, I don't want to lose my kids. And I'm like, well, I'd go to jail for this one. I said, because, I mean, you'll get on Oprah. Like, for sure. Like, this is like, I mean, you'll be on you'll write a book, there'll be a made-for-TV movie. Your daughter will be so horrified that you've become famous and rich, and she lives in foster care. You know, that's really going to be the bummer of the whole thing. And so, you know, and she said, well, I don't want to go to jail. And it was very interesting. I said, well, of course you don't want to go to jail. What parent would really ever want to go to jail? But why do you think that you had the right to take away her phone? 1, I pay for it. 2, she was rude. 3, I feel like you're lucky to have a cell phone. And so I don't want you to have a treat when you're punished. I said, those seem like great. I said, you can't go to the pearly gates and explain that and think that you'd still get in? Like, you think someone's going to say, like, oh, you really were really mean. She's like, yeah, I don't think I was mean. I said, then be willing to go to jail. And she kept crying, saying, I don't want to go to jail. You're not understanding me. And I said, no, I do understand. But this might be worth going to jail for. Because what she was thinking is that I will do anything to get my daughter back. And I will do whatever they tell me, which is not principled parenting. It's institutional parenting. What will I do? What will she do the next time? I mean, if her daughter's doing this at 14, can you imagine what the stakes will be at 17? I mean, there are kids that call DCF on their parents. You know, you won't let me go out tonight? I'm calling saying I was abused. I'm calling and saying I was sexually abused. And parents freak out and say, fine, be home by 11. Because they get afraid. They get afraid. So the pushing back has gotten more intense than cookies, stealing cookies and taking someone's stuffed animal and hiding it at the bottom of your drawer. But I don't think it necessarily negates the fact that parents still have to work rather hard to make their kids miserable. And the more miserable they get, I believe, as the therapist of them someday, that my kids that had miserable parents that made them miserable, they are really bright. They are really self-reliant. They are afraid of their parents. Oh my God, when's the last time I saw that? I miss those days where you were afraid of getting in trouble. You know, now kids just sort of think about what can I do to trick them. You know, and I'm sorry to say, a lot of you are quite trickable. Like, it's amazing. Like, you still fall for the story of, I was holding the bong for my friend whose parents won't let him have it in the house. Like, just like every week I hear the bong story or the pot in the knapsack. And the parents say, I really believe him. I'm like, really? Like, that is a really old story. That's like right up there with the email, hi, I've been mugged in England or Spain, and I need you to send me money. Like who has fallen for that, But parents still, and they say like, oh, he's such a good kid, or she's such a good kid. I can't believe she would bring a bong into this house. It must be her friend Marjorie. And it's like, or your daughter, I actually had a client recently. She was arrested, which I thought was great. She was arrested, she and her friends, 3 friends, so 4 of them. They had hired a homeless man to buy them booze at the liquor store. They got caught because they're underage and standing out front waiting for the booze. And then the old guy comes out and they hands the booze to them and they go walking through the parking lot together. So remember, these are not the sharpest cheese on the cracker, these young adults. And so the cops came. All the girls said that their parents were out that evening at work and other events. They all had to give phone numbers to the cops. Interesting, they all gave their phone numbers and said they were their parents' phone number. So when the cops tried calling one of them and the phone goes off on one of the girls, she said, oh, I forgot, I had to take my mom's phone this morning. Like, it's just like they could not stop lying. It was unbelievable. And so one of the parents said to me, she said, I think it's these other girls that my daughter's involved in. And I said, did you read the police report yet? And she said, no, I haven't seen it. My husband has it. And I said, well, I saw it. And I said, your daughter ponied in the most money of the 4 girls. She's always been generous. I think that's the kind of spell those girls have over her, because they know she has money. She's been a saver since she was like 6 years old. And it's like, wow. So fortunately, a few light bulbs went on for the mom eventually. But this is why it's like the worst job, because it's like I really have to think of my kids as manipulative, deceitful, conniving, which is like these are the only skills they have. They don't have wallets, they don't have cars, they don't have jobs, they can't, they can't do whatever they want. And so, if you were that oppressed, you would start thinking about ways to manipulate the environment to your advantage. Suck up to one of the guards, so maybe you get an extra roll with your soup. I mean, you start thinking of things because you don't have options. And so we're talking about people that don't have a lot of options, whether they're this big or this big, just not a lot of options. And so I'm not saying discourage that, because that is probably about as deep as some of their problem solving can get. The whole idea of sending a kid to their room to think about what they did. Have you ever, I get to ask those kids, so when you go to your room to think about what you did, what do you think about? And they say, I think I shouldn't have gotten caught. They're not thinking about what they did. They're sort of thinking about, if I had only done it 10 minutes earlier, or if I had put it someplace else, or if I hadn't left the light on, that's what did it. They're not thinking about how horrible I was. Which is usually what you want them to be thinking about, weighing the moral crisis, the ethical dilemma of the situation. They're just thinking like, oh, that didn't go well. Next time, I'm going to have to do a better job. So this is how they're built, and you just have to appreciate that. And you have to appreciate that you are, if you sort of think of Michael Phelps in the pool, he would swim down to one end and then push off and go back to the other side and push off, and you're the walls that kids push off. They get their momentum to go out into the world by pushing off of you. And so what happens if you don't provide enough sturdiness for them to push off, if you move with them? That's when things start getting messy. When you're sort of more your kid's friend. You are never your kid's friend. Ever. Ever. Friends don't have the ability to take car keys away from other friends. Or to say, you have to put half of your paycheck every week into a savings account. Like, friends don't have that. Friends can't ground people. Friends can't make you do homework. Friends can't even make you brush your teeth. or put on your pajamas, but you can. So embrace your power, like you are in charge. And they won't be happy. I remember once sort of telling my mother we had to go to bed early because we were overtired. I don't know if anyone still uses that line. You kids are so tired, you're going to bed early. And it's like, it's light out. And it's like, I don't care. And it's like, well, you know, I'm not going to sleep. You know, I hate you. And she said, yeah, well, hate me upstairs, you know, in your pajamas. I'm like, I'm not giving you a kiss. I'll live. You know, that's sort of like, I don't really care. I have come to learn that sort of we weren't overtired, although usually when we started screaming and crying, because we had to go to bed at 7 in the summer, instead of like 8:30 because we're overtired, that actually the fact that we would start screaming and crying was even more evidence to my mother that we were overtired. Had we been calm and rational, we might have actually made some progress, but we weren't smart enough for that. And so we would fuss, and then she'd say, see, you kids are so tired, you can't even manage yourselves. But it's about sort of, you know, it's about setting limits and holding to them and being something that your children can push off of. For all the nights I went to bed hating my mother, you know, that would be the same mother that I would like write love notes to. The same one. I didn't have more than one, like some kids do now. Yeah. All right. So worst part of parenting, they need to learn for themselves. I'm not going to talk much about these. They're sort of up there. When you get bored by listening to me, you can sort of read things I've written down. But it's about teaching kids how to move in the world. Now we're going to look at 4 different parenting styles. If I can just do something simple. Yes. All right. The authoritarian parent. No way. No way. Permissive parent. You know, don't cry, we'll fix it, we'll make it better for you. A big trap. The authoritative parent, who is sort of interested, but yet in charge. And then the uninvolved parent, who's sort of like, huh? Now, I'm going to suggest, because you'll see they're incredibly biased, and if you haven't picked out, you know, the authoritative one is the best one, you know, and sort of like, I'll give you the answer already. But I would speculate that probably all of you are all 4 parents, depending on the day and the situation. I'm sure you're dictators sometimes. I think you're pushovers probably sometimes. I think you are uninvolved, uninterested parents sometimes. I was at the Y last night in Burlington, and in the lobby of the Y was this very tired-looking woman. I'm assuming she was the mother of the 3 boys that were with her. And the boys were maybe 4, 5, and 6, and all 3 of them were on Game Boys, and she was just sitting there like this. And I sort of thought, you know, what would she have done 20 years ago? You know, I mean, she would have had to have done something else, you know, but maybe she would have left them in the car, because that was popular 20 years ago. You didn't worry about it, you know, you just sort of put them in the car. You kids go sit in the car, I'll be right out, you know, and then sit inside. But, you know, I would imagine, you know, that is probably the epitome of an uninvolved parent. I'm not engaging my children. I'm not providing them with any stimulation that has any worth in the world. I don't really care that they're not talking to each other or to me. I just want it to be quiet. So I would say that's probably an uninvolved parent. I don't know if that mom's like that all the time. She might have just been the babysitter and exhausted. But she looked so tired, I think she's a mother. There is something very tired looking about parents. So let's talk about each of these in a little more detail. So the authoritarian parent. Very much do as you're told. No need to even talk about rules because they're so implicit. I met with a couple that are having a very hard time with a teenager that's doing a lot of pushing. And I said, you know, how does your family talk about drugs and alcohol? Well, we don't. There's no tolerance, 0 tolerance in our house. I'm like, well, your son has a higher tolerance than 0 currently. So how are you talking about it? We're not. We are not even going to engage in those kinds of conversations. So I said, so this is a very tight house. And the mother said, she's like, well, you make that sound like that's bad. And she said, these are our values. And I said, yeah, I hear you. But I said, it's sort of, if you have someone who's drinking and possibly drugging in your house, it seems like you might have to entertain the idea that talking about it on some level could be useful. Nope. Nope. We're going to take away this, we're going to take away this, we're going to take away this. If he doesn't stop, we're going to ask him to move out. It's like, okay, so really, really tight. Really, really tight. I think they're terrified because they have had an agenda. They have had a 5-point plan, like we heard about for the last year. And then that's been right from the time they were born, how we were going to raise these kids and how they were going to turn out. And now they're kind of deviating a little bit, and we're just going to hold to the original plan. So not a lot of flexibility. So you probably bump into this part of yourself from time to time. They're sort of rather rigid, don't want to go there, don't want to deal with this kind of place, which can be rather challenging. Kids that grow up in these kinds of families tend to lack a lot of self-discipline and a lot of self-control. And if you think about it, it's sort of obvious reasons, because if I've always looked to somebody else to set the tone, then I'm probably not going to be very self-disciplined. I'm going to be more responsive. What people say or do determines what my response is, as opposed to having some sort of innate sense of judgment, values, principles, beliefs. This is a tough crowd to make decisions. These are the kids in college that, one of my favorite, do I have a cell phone handy? No. So one of my favorite, going into one of the dining halls at UVM, and you'll see some undergraduate standing at the food thing saying, no, they have chicken and then something, what is that? It's eggplant. Do I like eggplant? No, I don't want chicken. I had chicken already. It's like, so this is like a college student asking a parent what to eat. So when you talk about inability to make decisions, I'm thinking, how does this young woman negotiate sex if she's not quite sure how to negotiate lunch? It seems more complicated. And these parents take on the challenge. I mean, I personally wouldn't answer the phone of a child who was looking for lunch directions. I'd say, figure it out. You're in a dining hall and there's food and you have a meal plan. Go crazy. Try eggplant. If you don't like it, go back for chicken. So this is a tough group to experience a sense of self. And it starts early. Authoritarian families tend to be kind of right from the ground up. This is how we're going to grow our crops in this house. All right. Now let's look at permissive. These are kind of the kids that parents really want to be their friends. Maybe a show of hands or something. I mean, are kids really worth being your friends? Don't you have more interesting people than your children? For friends. Yeah, for friends. I mean, like people to hang out with. But, there's a lot of hanging out with kids now. I talked to a mom and dad. They have 2 boys, both under 10. And they said, do you think it's bad? This is on the way out the door of my office. They're like, do you think it's bad if we let our kids go trick-or-treating by themselves? I'm like, where do you live? And they're like in a neighborhood, like cul-de-sacs and not major roads or anything. They're like, well, because all the other kids, parents go with them. And I'm like, well, now you really don't need to go. There's so many people on the street, what's going to happen? You'll have parents out in the middle of the road. And I sort of think I don't ever really recall parents going trick-or-treating. And in fact, I think my mother used to make me be in charge of my sister, who was 6 years younger than me, and I don't even remember paying attention to her. I mean, she obviously made it home. She has triplets now. But it's sort of there's so much help for these children. I don't know if they need this much help. So the permissive, I want you to be who you're naturally inclined to be a brat. Because remember, we're talking about selfish people. We're talking about people that have no rights, people that don't have big enough prefrontal cortexes in executive function. So to sort of say, I want my children to blossom in who they really are, that will mean brats. That's what they turn out to be. They turn out to be Kardashians. They can't believe. Did you notice that Khloe and Kim and whatever the other one was, they're outraged this week at how much bad press their love life is getting. Leave us alone was the quote on MSNBC. I'm like, really? Leave you alone? You would have no life if we left you alone. you know, but they're sort of like, we watch them and listen to them. I do. I'm fascinated by them. And sort of think like, you know, how did you turn out this way? But, you know, I think there was probably, I don't know as if they had chores or if they got punished, you know, especially when your parents are really interested in your career because it's making their lives really much more comfortable. Parents are benefiting immensely from these 3 young women. So you know, so this is this permissive parenting. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to do with it. Anything else scream up there that's worth talking about? Lack coping skills. Yeah. Yeah. Love of me is the goal. You know, I think any parent that goes to bed knowing their kids don't love them every day is probably a good parent. You know, because like many days, you know, you can't possibly like your kids every day or every minute of every day. So the fact that they don't like you sometimes, it's like, is that really that bad? You know? But unfortunately, parents don't talk to each other about this stuff anymore. Parents used to complain about their children, but now everyone's embarrassed to complain because I don't want to seem like I'm that mother or that father. I know parents that like get embarrassed when their kid drops out of college for whatever reason, depression, drugs, poor academic performance. And like really change even when they go to grocery stores or what kind of holiday parties they go to because they're embarrassed. And it's like, how did you get embarrassed? I'm like, you really think in the grocery store of all the kids, all the parents that have kids in college and high school that none of those kids have academic issues, may have substance abuse issues, may have depression or anxiety, like you're it? Yeah. It's like, okay, that's a pretty big ego. I don't really think your kid's that special. But I think parents don't complain, and because kids complain about you all the time to everybody who will listen. Teachers, coaches, oh, my mother won't let me. No, my father said I can't. You know, Mom, can I? No way. No, I'm sorry, I can't. Can't have a sleepover. Can't do this, can't do that. Like they complain about you a lot. And so, you know, I would encourage you to complain to each other a little bit more. You'll realize you have more in common with other parents. But permissive parents don't like to do that. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. All right, the authoritative parent. This is the answer. You know, balance, nurturing, and expectations, freedom to learn, independence, but with rules. You're good at relating to your kids. Your kids end up with higher self-esteem. They're more well-adjusted. They understand obedience. Have you noticed this is sort of a lost thing? Kids really aren't very obedient. My sister's been dragging her kids to church since they were little, and we're Catholic. And I was with the family one weekend, and the family in front of us, their kids were out of control during Mass. All over the place, like up and down the kneelers, over the back, dropping their books, eating goldfish, like the whole 9 yards, all little kids. And so after Mass, the mother in front of us said to my sister, she said, oh, your kids are so well behaved in church. And so when we got into the car, my sister said, yeah, you know why my kids are well behaved? Because they know I'll kill them. And they do. They sit in church. You know, Mom, can I have a book? You know, then they sit. They stand when they're supposed to stand. They kneel when they're supposed to kneel. They don't climb over. I can't even imagine one of those kids like actually believing they could climb over the pew and that it would be tolerated. Not my sister. Not the one I abandoned on Halloween. But it is hard. This is probably the hardest position to be in because it requires the most attention and the most determination, the most dedication. This is where the job is constant. So I think some of what happens with permissive and uninvolved parents is that permissive parents are just tired sometimes. Like, whatever, I just want you to like me, like, for a day. You know, so I'll give you $20. Like, just like me for a day, please. I'm just so tired of the pushback. The uninvolved parent is, you know, sometimes I want to wear my iPod and not listen to you. Or I want to get in the car and drive to Maple Fields and get coffee and just sit in the car and listen to the radio for 20 minutes and not be in that house with all of you. So I think there's a tired part. I think the authoritarian parent is the tight parent that really was sure that they were going to win the election and then are shocked after the polls close. Shocked. Yeah, we don't know anybody like that today. Shocked. You know, like, okay, how could you be shocked? One of you was going to lose. You know, this should not have been hard to figure out. I'm either going to win or I'm going to lose. So how can someone be shocked to lose? But he's having a bad day, so let's be nice. Let's be nice. Let's be nice. Oh, so hard to have clients today that were so upset that Romney lost. It's sort of like I wanted to say sort of like, oh, come on, like I did 8 years with your friends. Like you can hang out with 8 years from my friends, you know. My friends might not do much better than your friends, but, you know, come on, I did hang out with yours, you know. All right, the uninvolved parent. No expectations. These families probably fall in kind of more severe categories. Very less involved, little closeness, feel very overwhelmed. Often there are mental health and substance abuse issues in these families, or multi-generational problems like poverty, incest, abuse, chronic unemployment or underemployment. So just families that are just kind of I sort of think of them as kind of beaten down, really tired. A lot of therapists don't like seeing families on Medicaid because they sort of say, you know, they're just not reliable. Well, you know, probably most people that are on Medicaid have multi-system problems in their families, one of which is finances and healthcare, but there's probably a host of other things. And so, like, perhaps they don't think of you, the therapist, because they had, like, bigger fish to fry that day. And so we are talking about families that can really feel very challenged from a number of directions. And yet, these are the same families that want to be just like everybody else. They want their kids to have cell phones, they want cable, they want Wi-Fi, you know, they want a tablet. You know, they want their kids to, you know, go to school, you know, but the challenges are great. So what you end up sometimes are just like, and you know, these folks are really easy to spot in stores. Like just the really, like, whew, like that looks like that's a tough crowd. And you see some of their you can see in the kids sort of the multi-generational effect of poverty or stress or anxiety or mental health issues. That the kids already seem off even when they're little. And then they're going to go up and be parents too. So these kids have a hard time relating to parents, often can be very aggressive or so passive that they find themselves getting really compromised a lot by other people, financially, sexually, emotionally, and don't really understand why. So that's a tough group. All right. So you know where you're supposed to be, and it's the hardest job of all of them. But now let's sort of look at sort of like, well, what about fostering independence by setting more boundaries? Your kid will get more independent the better your boundary setting is, if you could actually believe that. My driving got a lot better eventually in my 20s from being a lead foot. After enough tickets and a 3-month suspension of my license for so many points in a 12-month period, like eventually I learned how to drive the speed limit, but I was really slow getting there. But had they kept moving the speed limit around, I might still be in trouble. So the fact that it was always the same, I just wasn't doing it. In fact, in Winooski, 9 of my points was one same cop on the same street. And I had the nerve to say to my friends at 20, how old was I then, 24, that I think he has it out for me. Of which my friends said, you make it easy speeding on the same street every day. And it's like, well, it's stupid that it's 25. It's a 35-mile-an-hour street. And it's like, then you just keep going 35, you know, and this officer would just keep giving me a ticket. So the boundaries are really important to keep clear and hold them steady. So let's talk about, sort of, this is just, for me, a smattering of the kind of setting limit issues that parents get into. with elementary school kids, middle school kids, and high school kids. You can see some of the crossover. You know, I could talk a long time about all of these and what different families have done, but really what I'm most interested in is encouraging your parenting to be more principled, not reactive, that your ideas about limit setting fit into a belief and value and moral system that you have. I think of principles, values, beliefs, and morals as sort of like the things in buses that you hold on to if you don't get a seat. Like, you know, otherwise you fall down a lot, or you know, knock people's coffee, or you're just unstable. And these things kind of keep you stable. And that's what a principle, a value, a belief, a moral should do for you. They don't tend to change a lot over the lifespan. You tend to sort of like believe something, you know, like, you know, I don't think, you know, shoplifting is good. And then you just sort of like don't think about it again. So if someone sort of says, let's go steal something, you say, you can, but I don't steal. And it's like, it's not hard. Like, you don't have to, like, it holds you steady. And so to have those kinds of principles, values, beliefs, morals, relative to child rearing, you know, unfortunately, too many people have gone to books and to experts, you know, when in fact, you know, no one has any business giving you, you know, the answers to how to raise your kids. They're yours. And you're going to be living with them for a long time because they come back, if you haven't noticed. Yeah, this is all new too, the recycling of children. They're back at 28, they're back at 35, they're back at 42 with their 2 kids after their breakup. Then you're with them when you're old, you know, so, you know, settle down because you're going to be together for a really, really, really long time. You know, and if they live in another country, then you'll just be Skyping with them all the time. But they're going to be around for a long time. So, you know, the kind of work you do now, the foundational work, sets the tone for the rest of it. But I'd be interested in sort of some of your either concerns, your questions, your ideas. You can't be wrong in this room, you know, really. Like, you know, like no one's going to be that bizarre here, you know. Not when I think it's like normal when a parent sort of says, well, we just won't ever talk about that. You know, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that family. I just think it's really tight given what that family is being asked to deal with. And I imagine that's why they showed up in my office, because they don't know what to do. So when I suggested, well, you might have to start talking about alcohol and drugs, it was like, how? And I said, well, let's just start here. You know, your kids aren't here. It's just the 3 of us, doors closed. Let's just talk here. But really sort of scared, you know. And so, but I don't know if the idea is that bad. You know, I think there's plenty of parents that sort of say, you know, when their kids say, you know, am I getting a car when I'm 16? It's like, yeah, right. You know, and they feel fine never talking about it again. You know, and the line most parents use is, you weren't born in that family. If you wanted a car at 16, you needed to have been born in a different family. This is who you have for parents. No. Well, how am I supposed to get a job? I don't know. Figure it out. Well, my social life will be ruined. Okay, if that's your decision. You know, but they just feel really clear. Now, you could say that that was authoritarian. I think it's probably authoritative. So, all right, I want to hear from you folks. I've rambled on enough. Someone always has to go first.
I'll confess that.
We'll support you.
Okay. No, I think there's definitely some part of me that wants to be my kid's friend.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would say put myself in a permissive category solely. But I definitely think about that.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm interacting with them.
And so, if I could ask you, because you were very brave to sort of lead with something, what are you hoping your friendship with your kids will do for you and for them?
Well, I imagine that they would become complete, interesting, fun to hang out with human beings. at some point, that there'd be like some mutual respect and some mutual interest, so that when I'm 65, I'm not telling them what
really
to
long
do,
time.
but I'm hanging out with them.
Yeah. So, I mean, it would be nice to have kids that are interesting and fun to hang out with, right? No question. But I'm wondering, if kids learn how to be interesting people to hang out with from adults or from children. Because there are a lot of kids that do well with adults and don't do so well with their peers.
Yes.
You know, and so, like, I wonder, I think that idea is great. That sort of like, you know, I want my kids to grow up to be interesting, like, people that I really like. And it's sort of like, right, but will that come from more adult contact or more child contact?
I feel like they need both.
They need
when
both,
I go to
right.
a party and all the kids are downstairs watching a movie and bonking each other over the head,
Yeah.
and all the parents are upstairs drinking and
Talking and-
socializing, I think, okay, this would be a good opportunity to sit together at a table and have people learn some table manners. 'Cause
Yes, yeah,
when we're
Yeah.
at home, you
Right.
know, it's not the same kind of pressure. So.
right, right.
And, you know, I just think you can have both. I'm a both and kind of.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think I like the idea. It's sort of, I think it's going to just be tricky to figure out how to walk the middle of that. You know, it's a little like, you know, I let the dog get on the couch at my house, but no one wants to take my dog when I go away because my dog is always on their furniture. So it didn't kind of work in their house, you know, and so it's sort of like, so how would I teach my dog that you can only go up on the couch, even at home, if I invite you? Because maybe when they're staying at somebody else's house, that dog will sort of want to go up and wait to be invited. Yeah. So I think it is just trickier. Yeah. Yeah. But it is, you know, it is, I don't think enough parents think about sort of trying to figure out how to have interesting children. Because there's unfortunately there's a lot of not very interesting ones. You know, they're just like, they're kind of dull. You know, and some of them are, you know, dull, you know, and because they're online too much and they don't know how to be with people, but that's another topic. Yeah, yeah. All right, good. Yes, there was a hand in the back.
Well, I was just going to add to what she was saying, that I think about kind of feeding the meter a little bit with my children, which are 3 and 5, and just that, you know, having that opportunity to have fun and be playful, but also being able to be clear and set a rule or to say no to something, but having that rapport and the respect and having the fun, but also being consistent with where the limit is. And I think you can have both. And
Yeah.
if you're, you know, if you really can convey that deep, unconditional love, you know, I think your children feel more secure and they can take that answer more directly. And if they question your love, then you're really at a loss.
Right, right. So for those listening on the web, so the topic is sort of kids as friends, and can you have both your kids as friends and being a rule holder, and how it might be tricky to sort of pull off the two. I think in the authoritative parent category, there is an attempt to sort of like, I want to be able to relate to my kids, have fun with my kids, do things with my kids, find my kids interesting, maybe create interesting kids. I'm all for that as a therapist. But sort of like, you know, how would I also make sure that they know that, you know, the buck stops here all the time? You know, that, you know, we are the if it's a two-parent house, you know, we are the CEO and CFO of this company. You work here, and so we'll take input. You know, we'll take it under advisement. We might even modify some of our plans based on your input if it's presented decently. But the buck stops here. And I think it's really easy early on like up to about here, to get a sense of how well that's going. Because if they don't get a sense that the buck stops here, then imagine what it will be when they're taller than you. This becomes a huge issue for mothers who are like yelling at their sons like this. And they say, boy, it just doesn't work. You know, he's 6'3", and I'm saying, oh, you hold on 1 minute, you know. It's sort of like it feels. And then they like touch your head, that's not very popular, with mothers, but, they also sort of realize, like, and I'm not going to stand on a chair, and so sort of like, how do you create a climate where there's less back talk, but remember, there'll always be manipulation, because that's what oppressed people do. But less back talk and encourage more negotiation. So you're grounded this week, and your friends are having this big sleepover for your friend Leslie's birthday, and you really want to go. Create a plan to present to us. What's the rationale? What would you offer as a replacement punishment, given the punishment is till Monday and this sleepover is Saturday? So how would you want us to just like knock off a day of punishment? No. So come up with something good. And they might say, like what? And so like, well, come up with a plan and we'll work with you. We're open to the plan. A plan doesn't mean you're going to get what you want, but we're open to the plan. But sort of like, can you get kids to use this frontal part?
If you say you're grounded for a week and there happens to be a sleepover at that, then you're undermining your...
But you're saying, I want you to find some way of talking to me about that isn't annoying.
But if you've already said you're grounded for a week and then they come, like, to me, no, you're gone. Like, if you give them the warning, if you, whatever, you do this again, you're going to be grounded for a week.
Yeah.
Let's just say, so they know it.
Yeah.
And then they do whatever they're not supposed to do. So they made the decision to do it, knowing full well they were going to be grounded for a week. Then the week comes and they're going to make the sleepover. To me, there's no discussion. You're grounded for a week. You should have thought about that before you...
But what would a proposal look like?
There is no proposal.
I know, but what if your daughter said, Mom, I worked really, really hard on a proposal, a counter offer, and I can't come up with anything. Because
something really, to me,
no, but sort of like if they said I didn't really come up with anything, it's sort of like, well, how come we couldn't come up with anything? Well, it basically looked like I was just trying to get my way, and I didn't know how to like have some sort of plan that didn't look like me just getting my way.
they're not going to
Like
say,
wouldn't you,
they're going to say,
no, they will say that. If they are challenged to sort of think, they will sometimes realize, like,
they'll
okay,
say, ground me for 2 more weeks, just let me go to the sleepover.
yeah. And what's your rationale?
Their rationale? or
Yeah,
my
no, that you would say, what's your rationale for that? That to me just sounds like I want what I want.
I just don't even have
And so, like, what would be the plan? I mean, let's say you work in a company where we're not doing any pay increases this year. And you go in and you say, like, are you serious? Like, I really need a pay increase. I have taken on more responsibility. I have worked harder this year. I'm now supervising 2 more people. A boss might sort of say, like, well, put together a proposal as to why you think. I'm not sure we'll do anything about it. But, what if that employee puts together a proposal and the boss sort of thinks like, well, actually, I don't think this person needs a raise. I think this person needs a promotion. And the promotion needs a raise. But that just as an employee in his current position, he can't get a raise because we're not giving raises this year. So it's sort of like, I don't know what you'd come up with, but if it's like, I just want what I want because I want it, it's like, well, all right, then no. Like, that's easy. Ground me for a month, but I'll go to Leslie's party. It's like, no. Like, that's not a proposal. Yeah, right. It's sort of like, no. But if you come up with something interesting, I'm happy to entertain it. And kids sometimes come up with really interesting plans. But remember, there'll always be a little conniving, a little deceit, and a little manipulation, because when you're oppressed, that's what you do. But sometimes they come up with really good plans. Like, I can't come up with a plan. I guess I'm just sort of asking to go because it's really important to me.
And then what do you say?
I hear that.
But I'm sorry.
You're not sorry. I mean, this is where you're trying to be your kid's friend. Like, you're not sorry. You did it to them. So why are you saying I'm sorry?
Yeah.
It's like,
Sorry
yeah.
you put yourself in that position and you're going to miss the party.
It's hard to say, I'm sorry, you put yourself in this position. Yeah, yeah. Try that at, St. Albans prison. I'm sorry you put yourself in jail like
I mean,
this.
you do feel bad,
Yeah.
but it's like...
You do feel that. It's sort of like, but what about saying, I bet it's hard to make decisions and know what the consequences are in the future when you're making them. That's our goal. We just want you to be a more forward thinker, and you weren't yet, but we remain confident because we're fostering independence through setting boundaries. Yeah, and then give them the PowerPoint. Yeah. And they'll wish they had permissive parents. Yeah.
I was curious, maybe you could talk about punishment a little more. I've heard you say that word a few times.
Yeah.
I struggle.
Misery, torture.
I struggle with it becoming authoritative or becoming an external motivator so that they do something out of fear of punishment or fear of penalty versus that internal mechanism of respect or thought. So
Yeah.
if you could explain what you
Yeah.
mean when you say punishment.
Punishment, yes. So the question is sort of like, how do you think creatively, possibly, about punishment so that it doesn't just come off as, another form of authoritarian parenting? We don't have a lot of research that sort of says punishing criminals actually works. If you look at rates of recidivism. So I'm not quite sure punishment by itself is actually that useful. I tend to sort of think more about consequences and logical consequences, things that actually match up.
So what does grounding match up with?
Well, nothing. And actually, almost every parent I've ever talked to, ever, has said grounding is worse for them than it is their kid because they are stuck in the house with a miserable, miserable person who will remind you every moment that they're in contact with you that they hate you, that you're stupid, that this is dumb, it won't work. And so it's sort of like, who wants that job? I look at parents sort of having to tag team getting home from work to make sure the grounding is working. It's sort of like, well, I have a meeting tonight. Well, how are we going to know he stays in? It's like, fine, I'll get the neighbors to go over and sit. Like, it's sort of like this is, so I don't really understand grounding. I miss the days of when there used to be in-school suspensions. I understand why schools don't want to do it because they don't want your kids either. But sort of the idea that when you were suspended for 3 days of school, you had to go to school and sit in a room like the Breakfast Club with all the other people that are suspended and just do work all day. And your teachers would bring in your work for the day, and you would sit there with some miserable driver's ed teacher or somebody who's not doing something that period, who's just like mad that they had to do it like lunchroom duty, and they just sort of say, stop doing that, finish your work, and that in-school suspension. Out-of-school suspensions are complete vacations for kids. Sleep late, have lunch, Facebook, meet my friends when they get out at 2:30, go for a ride. Parents don't get home till 6. It's like, God, how can I have more days of this? So I'm not quite sure. I think like in-school suspension made sense. That sort of like the punishment occurred at school because it was an at-school thing. They were matched up. Can you give me an example of sort of where you struggle with a consequence, not knowing sort of whether it's an authoritarian punishment or kind of a useful punishment?
Well, I was thinking of
Good.
the church thing.
Yeah?
So I was thinking along the lines of your sister and the kids in church. She wants them to behave in church. What could be a logical consequence? So that's something that I deal with. With my 3-year-old, it's pretty easy. You put your feet on the table. You're not allowed to stay at the table.
Right.
But with my 9-year-old, it's a whole lot more complicated because
Yeah.
he's more skilled at being manipulative.
Yes, right.
And
And so your skills have to go up too.
have to go
Yeah, right.
up too, and so I want to elicit certain behavior, but I'm not always able to find a consequence that makes sense
So imagine sort of thinking, if you were less interested in eliciting a certain behavior and more interested in creating problem solving in your child. So I would imagine with the squirmy kids in church, if I'm guessing what my sister might have done for a consequence, other than to really, no, she wouldn't spank them, but she would probably be very disappointed. But my guess is that she would probably make an appointment with the priest, and the two of them would go and talk to the priest about children at church and what misbehavior is about. And I think my sister would hope that they would be terrified by the priest. And if that didn't work, my guess is she would make them all altar servers, because then they don't have to squirm, they're busy. Like they're walking around, they're water, wine, they got to go up and down, light candles, they got outfits. Like she's probably thinking like, maybe they're squirming because it's kind of boring for them, so let them serve Mass when we go. That's one way of doing it. So it'd be related, to church. So I think kind of the challenge is, we're talking about, like, you people are tired. Like, it's like I got to come up with, like, more stuff in the day. I have to, like, think, bigger, like, what's wrong with just random punishments? Like, go to your room, or you don't get a story tonight, or, it's like, the story tonight is a good one, because it's like, if normally you go to bed at 7:30 and we read till 8, and it's now 10 after 8, and you're still getting a drink of water, and you can't find your moo-moo, that you can't sleep without moo-moo, then there's no story. Story is 7:30 to 8. If you want to, have all kinds of tension and conflict from 7:30 to 8, we can do it that way too, folks. We can play in the tub longer, but then there's no story. So when kids learn that the story time ends at 8 on the clock, if it's 10 after, that's not hard for the kid to realize. This is how it goes down. So I think you have to be one step ahead. And it's hard to be one step ahead of manipulators, especially ones you love, and that you don't really want to think that this is their modus operandi, that they are like thinking about how to deceive you at every turn, at any age, the two beautiful ones right up there on the steps, all the things they think of that are just straight up evil. Yeah, and what they can get away with. Yes, I know you're blonde and adorable, but I bet you have some ideas about what you want. And you have ways of getting it. That's sort of like, how do you think one step ahead of that? And so if you don't think punishment, if you sort of think about, I'd like to create more thinking in this person at any age. Think about how you do that with, once kids have enough words, most parents stop letting them grunt for a beverage. They won't let them do this anymore. It's like, no, what do you want? You want juice, or do you want milk, or do you want water? It's like, juice, milk, or water. You know how to say these things. Use your words. And if they don't, and you say, fine, you're not getting anything, and the sippy cup grows across the room, you're like, yeah, all right, whatever. Like, be thirsty. Because it's the idea, I know you can do this. It's hard to do. Like, I have to remember that word, and I don't make words that well yet, and sometimes you can't understand me because I sound like I'm from Brooklyn. Have you ever noticed sometimes like little kids sound like they're from New York? And they have these strange little accents when they learn how to talk. But sort of like, but it connects it. It connects it to something. And you can set those kind of limits. But I think there's a lot of effort put into taking away things, which I'm not saying is a bad idea, but make sure it's connected. Taking away a cell phone, if someone is abusing it, makes sense. Taking away a cell phone because someone's not doing their homework, only if it's the cell phone that's keeping them from the homework. But if it's the internet that's keeping them from their homework, then it's the internet that goes. Or if it's TV, then it's TV that goes. Or if it's hanging out with friends, then you might sort of have a rule that, you can hang out with your friends as long as you want, till 9 o'clock at night, provided your homework's done. So if you take till 7:30 to get your homework done, then you have a shorter window with your friends. If your homework's done by 4:30, then you have more time with your friends. You decide. And you're trying to put that locus of control, that self-responsibility in them, Because most parents' goal is that their kids make good choices growing up. Like that's most people's parents' fear, is that their kids will like do really stupid things and get killed. That's like the big fear. And then there's lots of little ones that branch off from that. And so I want to know my kid's not going to get into a car with someone who's been drinking. I want to know that, my daughter, when she goes to a party and someone says, here, take this, and it's like, what is it? And it's like, I don't know, but like it feels great. And they're like, okay. Like that is like so common in high school and college. No idea what the pill is. Just someone says it's okay. And I trust the person I got it from. That one's always good. But no idea what it is. And we got to like help kids like say, well, I'm not going to take it if you don't know what it is. But who are those kids? Like, how do they do that? And I think they tend to have to be better thinkers. And so your job is really to kind of get them thinking early on. That's why you buy baby Einstein stuff and mobiles, and you buy the black and white toys for the first 3 months, because it's like, I want them to learn. I want them to experience their environment. I want them to understand things. It's like, great. Okay, so now once they're like, have locomotion, like now they got to understand like bigger things and more complicated things. So I would think more consequence than punishment, even though I probably say punishment, but I also say torture too, because that's how kids describe it. Yes?
So how much involvement do you think parents should be involved? I mean, like you're saying, okay, you have to do this by, if you've got your homework done by 7:30, these are the manipulators. They'll say, yeah, we did our homework, it's done. Do you have to check their homework? Do you have to check their assignments? Do you have to, are you just curious?
Well, you would only probably have that going on if homework wasn't getting done and grades were poor. I mean, a lot of kids sort of are just do their homework and do fine in school. Like they sort of understand that that's the other part of school, the homework part. But I think if you've got a kid who's not doing well in school for some reason, and you're trying to figure out sort of what's the problem. Is the problem the teacher? Is the problem the course that they're not doing well in or course is? Is the problem some social dynamic that's going on? Is the problem acne? Acne can really throw a kid off for a good couple of years of school. Like there's strange things. Large breasts when you don't want them, that really can kind of make school incredibly stressful for a young woman, especially if no one else in her class has breasts yet. So I think you have to sort of think about sort of like what else is going on. But if you sort of think it's like there's, too much, screwing around with, other things and not enough homework, then you have to sort of be thinking about, if it's like you can't go out till your homework's done, then I would say to a kid, so what would be the best way for me to know your homework's done? I could show it to you. Then it's not even your idea. All right, well, let's try that. That sounds good. Or you just have to trust me, Mom. And say, oh, honey, yeah, that ship sailed a long time ago. That's why we're doing it this way. But my goal is I would really like to care less about your homework for years. As soon as you start caring more about it, I'm going to care less about it. So let's work on getting there. But right now, your word, not so good. Not so good. Fortunately for you, I like you, and I'm going to probably keep you around. But yeah, your credibility issue, weak right now, pretty weak. But they might come up with something. You could go online. I mean, a lot of schools have stuff online. You can go online and look at and make sure I have all my homework assignments done. You could call my teachers or email my teachers. I think kids sometimes have pretty good ideas. But then I would follow that up. So if I email your teacher tomorrow and sort of say, has Ken been getting his homework done this week? And your teacher said, Ken who? I haven't even seen his homework all week. And you've told me I have done it. What is a mother to do? What is a mother to do? What should I do as your mother in that situation? Oh, you'll be really mad at me. I will. What would be a good idea for me to, what should I do to you? I don't know, punish me. All right. I like that idea. I like your thinking. I'll talk to your father. We'll try to figure out a really good punishment. But let's hope that doesn't happen. Sometimes you'll get kids that sort of say, did you email Mr. Bartholomew? It's like, no, don't. Don't. Email him Friday. Email him Friday. And it's sort of like, okay, you know, I mean, it's helpful when kids sort of say, you know, kids who have random urine screens, you know, when they say in the car on the way, you know, to the pee stop, this isn't really a good idea this week. and a thoughtful parent will freak out and sort of say, like, so should we talk about that instead? I don't really want to talk about it. But it's you pretty much know the outcome already. It's like, okay, so should we try again? Yeah. So I need you to know we do need to talk about this because it maybe is a harder problem for you than you think. If you're not really able to not be Xing, whatever it is, then maybe it's just too hard and we need to get you some help with that. But parents are so appreciative of those kids. You know, the kids that sort of say, you know, I tell my parents my grades are not going to be good this quarter. You know, most kids say, Kevin, why would I ever tell them that? Then the punishment begins early. And it's sort of like, and I say, well, but then you get a double punishment if you've told them you're doing fine and to leave you alone, and now you're getting D's, then you're not only going to get punished, but you're going to lose credibility. And so if punished goes both ways, you're either going to get punished early, later, but you're definitely getting punished. Is there some way you could preserve your credibility? And most of them will do that. You know, sometimes they'll, like, you know, wait till a Monday, so I get one more weekend of freedom before the torture begins. You know, parents tell me that it means a lot to them when their kid sort of says, "Can I talk to you?" And they can tell the kid's scared, you know, and they just sort of like, they're like, you know, I just want you to know that, like, I really was trying really hard to get my grade up in history, and I didn't, and, you know I probably didn't turn in some homework, but, you know, it's been, you know, and I mean, the parents will be sort of appropriately kind of deadpan, like, this is very concerning, and thank you for telling us. But usually when they go to bed, they sort of say, like, that was really good of him, wasn't it? Like, that's really hard to do. To come to the evil warden, you know, and the guard, you know, and say, I've been letting myself out of my cell at night. You might want to lock it earlier. You know, it's really hard to do that. And I think it teaches some really good values to kids. How do you have really difficult conversations? Most kids now, no, I won't say most kids, a vast majority of children have their parents do their conversations for them. You know, you talk to my professor, it's very popular at school. I know parents who not only do their kids' homework in college and write their papers for them, but actually their kid didn't want to go to college and so refused to fill out applications, and the parents forged the kid's signature and did applications, writing the essays themselves. And then they wonder why the kid doesn't do well at school. So it's interesting. It's very interesting. Yes?
How do you explain credibility to a 7-year-old that you think you want to interview?
Yeah. What kind of language would you use? The question is, how do you explain credibility to a 7-year-old? Sometimes metaphor and examples are good. Children's literature, if there's like a story about a kid who doesn't tell the truth about anything, and you can kind of say, like, you know, you're kind of like Monkey, aren't you? You know, yes. And like, so now, do you think that the things that happen to him in the book should be happening to you? You know, I want to believe you. How can I do that? Peter and the Wolf, yes. Do you believe me? Yes. Yeah. Do you believe me when I say things? Now, how do you do that? Well, you wouldn't lie to me, Mom. And it's like, I know. How come? I don't know, because your mom. You know, it's sort of like, right. So now, why would a kid lie? Because then I get to do stuff. You know, and it's like, yeah, right. So let's try for like 1 day or 2 days, you asking me about some of the things you'd like to do versus lying to me. And let's see if that's worse or better. You know, so it's really little. weren't. No, you weren't. You know, where it's sort of like they start seeing that, like, well, other people lie. Lying is not necessarily bad. Remember, we're talking about manipulators. But people lose confidence in you. People lose respect in you. You know, do you think Grandma's feelings were hurt? Maybe when you know, she couldn't talk to Daddy. Of course, then you'll have a 7-year-old who says to Nana, Daddy lies to you all the time. But then you sort of just look at your husband and sort of say, yeah, you take that on with your mother, because you do. You know, it's like, I'm not covering your butt. Yeah. But it is, I think you got to just think very small. I think 7, 8, and under, books can be really helpful. Tiny little examples. Anytime you witness them, you know, you're in a store and some kid's asking for something from a parent and the parent says no, and the kid says, you never get me anything, you know, to sort of when you get in the car sort of say, did you see that boy when he said to his mother that, you know, that she never buys him anything? Do you think that mother has never bought that boy anything ever? And it's like, no. And sort of like, so why do you think he said that? Because he wanted candy? And so like, right. So sometimes people like make up stories. I might not call it lying, I might call it storytelling. Now you also have to remember that little kids 10 and under, big fantasy life. I mean, these are people that still believe in like things flying around and, you know, monsters, and I mean, these are not bright people, okay? So you know, so in the fantasy world, they're not quite connected in the same way. There's not a lot of realism quite yet. And so you can also use fantasy.
A really good point about like a parent talking to the professor for the child.
Yeah.
Now, this is with a 7-year-old, so it's not quite that serious, but
I hope not.
He had told me something that had happened at school after he had got caught doing something and had a totally different story than was presented to me by the faculty. So I, at first, thought, oh, I better explain that to the faculty member, and then I thought, well, no, I didn't know if it's true. I'm going to look foolish if it's not true. If he, you know, my son's not telling me to. So I suggested to my son, well, when we meet with them tomorrow, I want you to say all that. You know, and I just don't know if he's quite, I don't know if he wouldn't say, you know, what he had told me because he's not brave enough, he's a little bit shy, or if it's just not true, you know, so sort of tricky one.
Well, more of this is probably better. Yeah. Because you get this amazing opportunity when you force him to go talk to the principal or whatever, that you get to watch how other people talk to your child. And parents don't often get a lot of opportunities to observe how their kids interact with other adults. And so he might be nervous, and he might fudge another story, but you might sort of be really impressed, because, you know, he's going to fudge stories, but you might be really impressed at the fact that as scared as he was, you know, he made good eye contact, you know, he wasn't disrespectful, like that was pretty good, even though lying more wasn't really a great idea, but this is what kids do. So yeah, so, you know, I just like being less of a mouthpiece for your kid would probably be better.
Would it be okay in the meeting if I were to say, I don't want to say what's in the Zoom.
Yeah.
If I were to say,
well, yes. No, so what if you made a list with your 7-year-old of the things that we're going to talk about, and then you can sort of say, you know, in the meeting, so now we've talked about 2 of the 3 things that you were going to talk about. What's the other one? And you can whisper in his ear. You can whisper in his ear. Remember this one? It's like, I don't want to say that. Just you start and I'll help you. So like have him start it at least. But it's like, you know, you know, people need to be more uncomfortable as early as possible, so that they actually have some skills at being uncomfortable. Because there's not a lot of skilled, uncomfortable people out there. Pharmaceutical companies are our best example of that. We do not like to suffer. We want to be able to eat Mexican food even with an ulcer. I love those commercials. Have to go out with the office party. Oh, Mexican. You know, and then it's like, you know, and it's like, okay, if you can't eat Mexican, don't eat Mexican. Don't take medication. Like, don't eat Mexican. You know, it's like, oh, it's unbelievable. All right, we're going to have one quick little video, and then I have to let you go. Because you have children, I'm assuming. Oh, here she is. Now, this is a teenager's response to the mom's video earlier. There are no words under hers, and so because she's a teenager, she mumbles, and so you have to pay close attention.
I'm up and dressed and wear this my cute Ugg boys impressed with the clothes, my shoes, and my backpack, and yes, I'm wearing that. No mom, no OJ with the Pop-Tarts, that with the lunch you gross do. I look back after school, bring a snack when I get back, and then tell more till I collapse. This TV shows to us teasers and most important thing at all. She goes there for us, so the coolest show up at home. Remember not to have nonsense when my friends on our road record. You may have shared some time, so when we come that you will not hear touch later. Not now, I'm coming. Can you drive me there? Close the door, get out. You just have short, mess up my hair. I stand here at once to bother me. Never sounds to text up to me, already down the see later. Take your shoes in the moment. Second, I take this call, that's a show so cool, mom. Please chill out, or give that low dad. Just relax, you're breathing, mom. Like, you want my call, and you hear though? Memory, come on, hi, mom. I'm over at Sandy's, and I'm wondering if I can spend the night we're watching movies. And yes, Sandy's mom is also cool right now. To her, oh, maybe she's in the shower, so I'm not sure how. Got my homework, what I'm grounded. Oh, you are so unfair. Were you never young? You're the worst. Whatever. I really don't care. Do I have to? I want to. Can I have some money? No, we're not taking weird. Just FWBs. You don't get me until then. Can you drop me off here? I don't want my friend. See you so near. My day's fine. My touch is just okay. I'll never be like you. My kids be great. Don't be back in the week. Speak privacy. Can I go there? Don't get that. Oh, and about parental control. About parental controls. They don't really work. We know when you work at often cover up with fake homework, or I have more friends, red parent alert. So I want to tell you that when we say that we hate you, we know you really want to keep us safe, but can I just make our case? Sometimes we just want a little freedom from your rules, and when you nag us and tell us to take out the trash and clean dog poo, our only course of action is to roll our eyes at you, Mom. Or to take a face fight with Mom, take some friends with somebody from their tailor on. I guess it's true. I love you. And tomorrow we will do this all again because the moon's like never ends. Can I have a labor for you? I need it. Just trust me, and everyone else does it too. Hey Mom, 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 hey Mom. I love you, I do. I just never tell you. Visit onteenstoday.com, the only time you will get the kids' perspective on awesome parenting.
Not bad, was she? She did a nice job, even though there was a lot of mumbling. You can imagine what it's like to fight with her. Yeah. So, when you leave, in the moments when you're not tired, never, when you're trying to think about what kind of parent you want to be, think mostly about being a principled parent. Less about outcome. Most parents have no idea how their kids are going to turn out. Surprisingly, most turn out better than parents ever even dreamed. But how do you sort of instill confidence, and confidence coming from kids that know how to make choices and make decisions? And they're really bad at it for a really long time. You know, I stopped speeding just before I turned 30. I had been speeding since 16. So that was almost 14 years it took me to learn one thing. So, no, I set my cruise control, even on 25. Oh, you people are so annoyed to drive with me. Because they're like, you could go a little bit faster. I'm like, not me. Like, not my track record. So 35, 25, 55, I'm very annoying. But, you know, I've spent a lot of money on attorneys and fines and buses. So, yeah, buses during those suspended times. All right, have a good evening. Thank you. December 7th, how kids affect your marriage. I've heard it happens.